would like to introduce Sandra Ngo from the Edmonton Social Planning Council. Sandra will be speaking about the Edmonton Vital Signs report that highlights important information connected to seniors in our communities. Please welcome Sandra.
Good morning, everyone. So I'm a bit of a wanderer when I talk, and I'm really scared to fall off the stage. So I'm really excited to speak to you today about the City of Edmonton Vital Signs. Who here, show of hands, has read, seen, know about vital signs in the past? Oh wow, so a lot of people, that's great. Susan's thrilled. We will be handing out, Susan will be handing out copies of the vital signs in case you didn't get a chance to pick it up, so you can peruse as I'm chattering along about the report. It's important to note, before every vital signs presentation, I like to lead with the fact that every year we collect the most up-to-date and localized indicators on what it's like to be living in Edmonton. So we try to first look for indicators available for the city, and then if not the city, we go to Alberta, and if not Alberta, we'll go to Canada, okay? So this year's theme for the vital signs was women, and we tried to look through the indicators through a gender-based lens. So we took our income data from the T1 tax filer data, and as you can see here, men make, the median income for men was $53,000 compared to only $33,000 for women. And you can see here that there's a pay gap of about 74 cents to the dollar that men make. And that doesn't take into account things like the numbers of hours worked, in addition to the type of industry. But if you control for that, the income gap shrinks to about 86 cents. So it's still persisting even though we're taking into account all these different factors. One of the ways that you can address that income gap is to encourage women to take up trades because those tend to be higher paying. I'll show you later, but women tend to work more often in lower paying sectors. And on the far right, you can see the distribution of income level. So women are overrepresented in lower paying jobs and very underrepresented in higher paying jobs, especially once you hit that 6-figure mark. In terms of education, one thing that really surprised me is that there are half as many women who hold a doctoral degree as compared to men, despite the fact that women actually tend to more often hold university degrees. As I was mentioning before, women are less likely to be in trades, and there's only about 13,000 women who hold a trade certificate as compared to 50,000 of men. And you can see that women tend to not hold leadership positions. And this has gotten better with age, but you know what, it's still persisting. So there's really only about 1 woman for every 2 men in senior management. And then on the far right, we have statistics on female representation and leadership. And the next step, we wanted to focus on domestic violence. And on the far right, we have the domestic violence statistics, and we show a profile of what the most common profile of a victim is, but it's important to note that not every single domestic violence victim is, for example, female, 20 to 34 years of age, victimized by an intimate partner, etc. One of the things that we wanted to highlight in these stats is that domestic violence really can happen to everyone. That's why we paired it with data from the Sexual Assault Center of Edmonton. Interestingly to note, about 1 in 6 of their clients are men. And so we really want to go after this myth busting that only women are victims of sexual assault or domestic violence, all right? 1% of them are transgender. 83% of women with disabilities experience sexual assault in their lifetime, which is staggeringly high. And 57% of Indigenous women experience sexual assault in their lifetime. And sexual assault counts for 11% of victimization against the elderly. And so when you're looking at types of abuse for seniors, that can definitely cross into the realm of sexual assaults as well. As you guys have probably heard already, Edmonton has a very high rate of sexual assaults. It's much higher than the national average. And this tends to be because we are a younger population. We have quite a few young males, and nothing against young males, it's just that that tends to be the stage of life where crimes are committed. So we have the illustrious Michael Thayer here, and he has already spoken so much about the rights of LGBTQ people in Edmonton. He is also on the advisory committee for Vital Signs. And if you look here on the section for SOGI Edmontonians, or sexual orientation and gender identity, you're going to see a lot of text and definitions. And that's because our advisory committee stressed to us it is so important that we talk about language, about cultural awareness, and about how these groups want to be identified, because that is just one of the main frontiers of how we can begin being inclusive and having more acceptance as a society. We also have statistics on same-sex couples in Edmonton. This is on the bottom right. 1% of couples in Canada are same-sex, but they're less likely to get married, and they are a growing population. So it's actually gotten much higher, and that can be because as a society we've become more accepting. It's more we've become more open to the idea of same-sex couples, and so in the Stats Canada reporting, which is what we've used, there have been more people reporting that they are living as a same-sex couple. So one thing that we wanted to really focus on was acceptance and belonging in our vital signs. And Alberta, we had something from the Alberta Trans Youth Survey, and that talked about the safety, violence, and discrimination issues that many of this population faces. In terms of housing and homelessness, a lot of LGBTQ youth are at high risk of being homeless, mostly as a result of parental rejection. So it's very important to talk about families as a whole when you're talking about LGBTQ youth. If you experience high levels of rejection as an LGBTQ person, you are far more likely to have poor mental health, such as depression, anxiety, to use drugs, and to contemplate suicide. So it's really important to realize that rejection, discrimination, these have tangible results on our health, our sense of well-being, our sense of safety. So it's really important that we focus on those initiatives. And then, of course, we have to focus on LGBTQ seniors. And as stated already, they have a lot of challenges with finding housing where they feel that they can be open about their sexual orientation or gender identity, because a lot of them have struggled with discrimination for their whole life. And when they go into care, a lot of the time they can actually face again that discrimination that they faced as a youth. And so it's really critical that we think about inclusive spaces, especially in institutional care. And we also have a little bit of data on Two-Spirit and newcomer and refugee populations as well. So with visible minority populations too, as I mentioned before, women tend to be overrepresented in low-paying jobs, but that but the wage gap actually increases if you take into account visible minority status. 4 in 10 Edmontonians are from the visible minority, and if you're wondering how we define visible minority, we pull the definition from the Employment Equity Act of Canada. And on the far left, you can see the representation of visible minority women in industries. So a lot of the time when you're talking about pay gaps, for example, you have this idea that, oh, it's an education issue. They're not accessing the right educational attainments, but actually visible minority women tend to be better educated than the general population, but that's not translating to income opportunities for them. They're twice as likely to have a degree in a STEM field, for example. And lastly, for visible minority women in leadership, the number of representatives have increased over the years, but so far we don't have any visible minority women who are in city council yet. And I know a lot of people are working on changing that. Next, we're moving on to hate crimes and discrimination. The hate crimes and discrimination data is actually pulled from the Alberta Human Rights Commission and not from EPS. And the reason that is so is because EPS doesn't explicitly collect data on ethnic origin. And so you can't really be looking at hate crimes when the data source itself doesn't analyze it. It's not very reliable. In terms of safety, visible minority women tend to be less confident in the police, but our EPS, we do have better representation. And then for health, a lot of the times in health research, people tend to really cluster visible minorities together, not realizing that there is a huge amount of diversity in health outcomes and risks between different populations. And there's a lack of high quality population level statistics on those different health outcomes. So that's really important to know when you're looking at the research. And then for visible minority seniors, these seniors are very diverse. 10% of them are visible minority between the ages of 65 to 74. 8% of them are from a visible minority if they're over the ages of 75. And probably one of my favorite statistics is that visible minority grandmothers are far more likely to be living with their grandchildren, caring for their grandchildren, almost 5 times as likely. And I can attest to that myself. So. All right. So senior women, which is really what I'm sure most of you are interested and focused on. And Susan has wanted me to stress that the next issue of Vital Topics, specifically on senior women, will be released in December. So keep that in mind, keep your eyes out. It's also on page 5 of the full report too, in case you're wondering on where to get it. So one really cool thing, or not so cool if you think about it, seniors are more likely to work past retirement. This is a trend. This is a historical trend, and it's increasing. Now, there are some differences between how women and men work after the age of 65. Women are more likely to work part-time, whereas men are more likely to work full-time. But there is a trend to of having more seniors working past their ages of retirement, and whether or not that's because of the decreasing real value of old age security or pensions, we haven't really landed on why that is yet, but it is something that we have been seeing for the past several years. In terms of the demographics of seniors, it's really cool, really interesting is that there are 160 women over the age of 100, but only 30 men who are centenarians. And I know that one of the key focuses for today is the value of aging in place. And aging in place has found to be extremely beneficial and cost-effective for seniors as well. So we have a statistic there for you on that. And one of the reasons why we focus on senior women is because they are likelier to, as you all know, to live longer, to live alone, to struggle with poverty, and to be isolated. And next we look at engagement and social isolation. And one thing I really wanted to highlight is that a lot of these statistics, they are actually from the Older Adults Needs Assessment from Age Friendly. And it's so great that that data has been released because otherwise it wouldn't be available and there would be a lot of information missing on the Edmonton website to be a senior. Over half of senior Edmontonians volunteer, and the STI rates in seniors have actually increased dramatically in the past few years, almost going up by rates of 2 to 3 times. And so if you're talking about seniors as dimensional people, well, they are having sex. And so it's important to know that we should, but that conversation really doesn't happen. So a lot of services don't focus on that. And again, as mentioned before, Edmontonian seniors are very diverse. Next we talk about living in Edmonton populations. And I'm just going to really briefly skim over this because it's not the main focus of today. But we have statistics on employment, education, education, transit satisfaction, car accidents, and housing, poverty, homelessness. And so it really, there's a whole ton of information in the Vital Signs report. But the last thing I want to show you guys is this really fun open data map. And this looks at all the different neighborhoods and looking at some of the key stats. So where are the most populous neighborhoods, where are the most seniors live, and where the most cats are, that kind of thing, where the most edible fruit trees are. Fun fact, the neighborhood that has the most seniors also has the most cats. Whether or not that's related, I'll leave it up to you. Yes, and that is it. So thank you for listening.
Thank you, Sandra. Always not part of the plan, but I hope I won't be fired if I open the floor for a couple of questions. Because it was a statistical data, and whenever I see data, my eyes glitter. So,
maybe I could just add something, just so that people are aware. So the social to like to stay away from microphones. So Susan Morrissey with the Edmonton Social Planning Council. Vital Signs has been a project that we've been working with the Edmonton Community Foundation for, well, this is our 6th or 7th. I think this is our 6th edition of Vital Signs. Each year, more and more people are becoming more aware of the report that we've been putting out. So this is a partnership between the Social Planning Council and the Edmonton Community Foundation. I want to make sure I get that in. And each year we generally try to choose a different kind of a focus and topic. So our very first time we did it, it was on food insecurity in Edmonton. We did a year on youth in Edmonton. We did one issue on urban Aboriginals, and we also did one on minorities. And I'm probably forgetting one. At any rate, those are all on our website if you're interested in looking at those from past years. What was different this year, we also decided to do what we're calling vital topics, which some of you may or may not have seen. And these are 2-page mini focus on a specific aspect. So the very first one that we did, and that was what you saw in each sort of section. So the seniors one will come out either this month or next, or December. There was the one on racialized women, and the other 2 as well. So they have a little bit more detail in those 2-pagers. They're all on our website or the Community Foundation website. You can access them. And so I just wanted to make sure that people are aware. The Community Foundation puts out a legacy magazine, a quarterly legacy magazine, and that's the primary place where you would find those vital topics. But again, they will be on our website as well as their website once the last one's released. But they just give you a little bit more of a snapshot about what's going on in Edmonton. And we chose women, pseudo-women topic this year because we had the LGBTQ that we also included in that. But we chose women this year because of all of the significant issues and things facing women throughout the world. Next year we will be doing this again, and we have a whole range of topics that we'll be choosing to do next year around demographic and things of interest. The focus of this is really just to try and educate everyone about some of the issues that are facing Edmontonians, that we're all in this together, and that we can all contribute towards the solution. So you're not seeing the senior-specific vital topics because it's not quite out yet, but you've got a snapshot here. But you will see that one coming out real soon. And I would just encourage you to share this with as many people as you want. If you want hard copies of these things, we have boxes. We can certainly make stuff available, or it's available all online. And our focus really is to try and tell a story both about Edmonton in general through the demographic information that you see towards the back of the report, but also looking at specific topics. So, thank you.